Great. Welcome to this rather special episode of the Founders Speak podcast in collaboration with Couchonomics. Joining me on the yellow table is someone I think most of you should know of. And if you don't, I would suggest you go and Google David Chaum before you actually see this episode. But I want to just welcome David, and I want David to sort of introduce himself because I guess I can't do that justice. So, David, over to you.
Well, I'm the guy who invented electronic money, a digital bearer instrument, in the early '80s because I knew how important it was that that people could protect their own privacy in the upcoming information age. And at that time, the National Security Agency said you can't have a conference about cryptography. It's a we're going to throw the book at you. And as being a graduate student at Berkeley and realizing how important cryptography and electronic money would be going forward, I organized a conference on cryptography. It turned out to be a major conference. It's the basis for the International Association of the major professional association in the field now. But I risked spending the rest of my life in jail to set electronic money and cryptography free.
So he's not in jail. He works out of LA, but I guess he's most of the year traveling to different parts of the world. David just spoke at the SFF 2023, and the title of his conversation, or his speech, or his presentation, or his talk was "Better Than Money," right? And he was kind enough to share with me, if I may call it a white paper or a paper, which provides the background to the presentation that he presented. I went through it. It was fascinating. I have to be honest with you. Some parts took 2 or 3 times of reading, and that's not a function of what's written, but it's a function of my intellectual capability.
It's a little dense in parts.
Yeah, it is. It was a little dense, and this has been a crazy 4 days for most of us.
Yeah.
Right. But I think, David, let's just start with trying to summarize the presentation, which obviously only a subset of people who are here at the SFF heard.
Yeah.
And hopefully this podcast will project to, anywhere between 20 to 100,000 people, right? And across the world. So what was Better Than Money all about? So what is that all about?
Well, it might seem surprising that someone who invented electronic money is now against money. I'm like the only person in the world who thinks money is evil. It's a bad thing. And what you really want is the ability to keep all of your assets invested in different assets like Bitcoin, like gold, like Ethereum, and maybe some currencies and Apple stock,
different asset
whatever
classes.
you have. Yeah. And also even, oil futures and so forth. So that, like all the exchange traded funds, there's like 1,100 of them. This allows a richness of, for each person has a different need for the type of portfolio, like back in the old barter days, because you might have travel plans, or you have, your business requires access to energy or real estate, whatever. So, it's better, but poor people are forced to hold money, which is just debt, and it's inflationary, and it could vaporize, but they're forced to hold it in order to, to buy food, to transact. And so they never get ahead because they can't accumulate wealth. Rich people or corporations, they keep as much of their assets in investments as possible. Of course, they don't want to hold cash. So the financial system basically is forcing the poor to give the value to people who can invest it and make money off the poor. Money is a ripoff for the poor. The payments industry, according to McKinsey, crossed $2 trillion in revenue, in annual revenue, during the pandemic, and then it's up to like 2.5 now or something. This is a tax on $100 trillion global. It's a 2% tax on the global GDP, and this is friction that's dragging the whole economy down. And the rich, medium rich people are, when they do consumer transactions, they're getting a discount with their Amex cards, right? So the poor are paying for that, And, poor people who need to send money back home, they're paying 6-7%, even though World Bank said, guys, you got to stop this. Let's do it at 5%. And everyone said, well, okay, we'll cap it at 5%. Now they're back at, to 6 or 7%. And it's so, but the real thing is, it's, I as a slight epiphany that ordinary people are rationally saying, like, the system's not working for me because I'm not really feeling like I'm, bettering myself, or I'm going to be able to do as well as my folks did, or, and so I'm just going to throw in with, these guys who, are to just take over everything. To heck with democracy, it's not working for me. Okay. But if you look at the last, century, right? There was another that happened. The ugliest things that ever happened because of that kind of situation where, the economy wasn't working for people. So they said, oh, we'll go. But for the people that it was working for, where there was, prosperity was growing and people could feel it individually, they became real defenders of democracy. Look at the US, so basically all we have to do is just stop forcing the poor to hold money and let them hold assets, because AI can help them invest it really well. The alternative is, of course, that AI will help the really rich invest it really well, and they'll keep screwing the poor. And that's just not that's not going to end well for everyone, because this, the
have and have
tension that
nots,
we have underlies a lot of conflict and the shift towards centralization of power. And make no mistake, if we shift to centralization of power now, AI will ensure that it is irreversible. Finality in payments is a good thing, right? Mm-hmm. But in civilization control, it's a bad thing. Mm-hmm. And we've always had the idea, well, if it doesn't work out, people won't, No, forget that. AI is already shown how it can, even the primitive AIs, how easily they can manipulate public opinion, beliefs, and even values. So you can easily be certain that if power is ceded to some, centralized authority, they will use AI to make sure that they never get out of power. That's what power always does. So it's the end. Thank you, Francis Fukuyama. End of history. I'm saying this will be the end of civilization. You can talk about going to Mars and all this shit. No, that's ridiculous. We are at the precipice of ending civilization.
It's very interesting. I never thought that I'd be hosting a podcast where we'd be talking about the end of civilization using money as a concept. But I understand your way of thinking. But I'll replay my understanding in a very simple way.
Sure.
What you're suggesting is that everybody, irrespective of where they sit on the wealth curve, should be able to hold their monies in asset classes which allows money to be more efficient for them, and therefore it works for them, right? Which is what the rich are and the large corporates are.
Absolutely do, yeah.
And the second part of that discussion, and I'm sure there's several parts of this discussion, is with things like AI, you can actually all become treasurers yourself. So
it could be a great equalizer. So it could be misused just to make the rich richer, but actually it's actually capable of empowering the poor. But the thing is, making the poor richer will make everybody richer, because all ships will rise, and it will, war and strife is not good for anyone. Economic collapse, you could say the rich don't care, they could benefit, but warfare and struggle is damaging to anyone and everyone.
So here's the million, billion, $trillion question, right? So if you really look at the world of money and the way things are sort of playing out right now, so there is this concept of programmability of money, which we're seeing, and you obviously catalyzed it by electronic money. I hope you sleep well these days, right?
No, but, okay.
Right. So,
but look at eCash 2.0 with the CBDC that Swiss National Bank and the Bank for International Settlement built. It's my invention with my co-author Thomas Moser, Swiss National Bank. It's a privacy protecting CBDC that is in effect, unconditionally secure against counterfeiting. So there's no good technical argument for not using it.
Okay,
But
but people are, right,
well, yeah. In other words, don't blame me.
no,
Because I went on my way to prove that you can't use a technical argument for making an evil use of a payment system.
I totally get it.
Okay.
But if you really look at, the way money is moving, so, you have public infrastructure coming around in terms of how payments are managed, because, government really looks at data as now a national tool, right? And so therefore, there's a lot of public infrastructure being built around payments. It's actually being nationalized. The world is getting more global. Payments is getting more local, right?
Well, yeah. So it turns out that the eCash 2.0 that I mentioned can actually allow central banks to monitor all kinds of economic aspects, like what categories of people are buying what, spending on what kinds of goods and services and so forth. So the idea that you need to surveil the population in order to get this kind of useful aggregate information is disproven by eCash 2.0. So the real government role in payments is a response. Central banks view their mission and their charter as protecting a public good, which is money and the nation's money, and that's something they're doing. It's a commons, and that facilitates economic activity. But what have now shown with this direct asset to asset transfer is that is actually a regressive tax that's paid out to the private sector, and that if they want to promote the common good, what they should do is, central banks do not want to be in the payments business. They don't even like doing what's called real-time gross settlement. When they settle for commercial banks, right? They like the Fedwire and so on. That's below their pay grade.
But is that an American view to the life? Because actually, everywhere else in the world, you're seeing central banks actually get into payments, right? They are actually
not so much. They don't. That's kicking and screaming. CBDC has not really been wholeheartedly adopted anywhere.
Oh, no way.
Their trials, because they're not anxious to do it.
But domestic schemes, domestic rails, right? Faster payments.
Well,
a lot of them are actually
they're trying to promote the public good, but they're not. What I'm saying is they have no inherent desire to be involved in the operational aspects of payment systems. To the contrary, they always act to get out of that because they don't benefit from that. They're supposed to be there, to do the bigger things and protect the country's wealth sovereignty
I totally get it.
Yeah, so they're not interested. It's not like they're trying. There's a question: if does the public want central bank money? Are they they're regretting that they're losing access to central bank money because banknotes and coins are falling into disuse in many places, and should central banks then step in and provide access to central bank money to make up for that? But that's a secondary thing.
Okay, so let's take.
I'm sorry, but
no, you're nothing sorry about. In sense, I would love to have a separate conversation.
That's a whole,
yeah,
because that's not really the point. The point is the world's about to melt down because people are giving up on democracy. The youth in America don't seem to be very enthusiastic about it. We've got to find a way to let people who don't have a lot of resources start to gain resources, and the way to do it is to get them out of holding money and let them hold investable assets.
So, last question before we end this discussion. How does it actually hold true for cross-border movement of money? So the concept of better than money.
It's perfect for that.
But does that mean the whole world needs to shift?
No, this is not a boil the ocean thing like John Doerr once told me about. This is something, a commercial bank, just a regular, what people consider to be a bank, could issue this to all their good customers, and they could use the app, and the customers it would seem like it was working the real way for them, and they would benefit from it. And then other commercial banks, say in that country and other countries, could make bilateral agreements, and then you would start to develop a system. Could be global. When you want to have foreign currencies because you plan to do travel or you need to make remittances, well, that's just one asset. category. So it just shows how one size fits all is like sort of a Procrustean straitjacket, where they chop off your feet if they're too long. The money is what we had barter before money.
Yep.
And that was the good thing about it, was that you had the kind of things you wanted to keep because that you felt were valuable and would be helpful to you in the future. You had your own portfolio choices with barter. Then when we went to commodity money like gold-backed money and fiat money, that was taken away. It's one size fits all, which even the classical economists showed that's not optimal for anyone, let alone for future payments. For loans and credit, it's even the World Bank doesn't do. They do. All loans are in baskets of currency, right? Because if you want to project, you want to have a future payment, like for supply chain, any kind of loan, it's not good to do it in a. So, this is just the wrong way to organize an economy. We need to do it in a way that allows people to accumulate wealth and to be, let's say, have their feet in more than one region of the world, possibly, like many of us do, and to, sort of fungibly and flexibly give their input to the financial system about what things they think are really valuable and so on. I leave that to people who may have some conflicting interests and so on. That's not good. So markets really benefit when you sort of crowdsource, what's of interest. So it's just a huge win-win. And my sort of molding industry closing parting line would be that who knew that it was possible to do direct asset-to-asset transfer, but the technology is now here. I've proven it out with eCash 2.0. It's super strong, and it took me better part of a year to figure out how to do this, but you can really do it. And so now that we know, because no one even thought about doing it because it didn't seem practical, but you can actually do it, and we're now at a point where AI makes it, as you say, really great. And so let's do this thing, and let's do it now. Let's go.
I said that was the last question. That wasn't. This is the last question.
Okay.
So where are you, David, in your conversations with the central banks across the world, right? And where are you seeing receptiveness? Where are you seeing?
Well, I wouldn't want to betray that.
I don't want you to say.
Let me put it to you this way: that there are a number of central banks, if you will, nation states that are very interested in this, because it's a way to make friends with people all over the world, and to guarantee that the militarization, weaponization of money isn't going to leave you out. Most countries around the world were not very happy when the U.S. started just pushing people around. They thought, hey, maybe this could happen to us.
Yep.
That's the job of the central bank, to make sure that never happens.
Yeah, and that's why there's domestic schemes.
So if they they're active in a system like this, it totally protects them against that kind of thing. It befriends them with the emerging economies, which is something a lot of countries want to do, and it guarantees them a kind of wealth generation going forward. I mean, this is not this is not a charity. It's a doing well by doing good. There's a lot, that's a $2 trillion just for payments. This is a replacement product for that whole market, the whole $2 trillion. So are we going to charge $2 trillion for this? Hopefully not. But that gives us a lot of headroom, because I'll tell you, the computers you need to make this happen, the software we've already written, a lot of it, it's not fully written. I mean, come on, there's plenty of money to be made here without, and still,
there's plenty of headroom. So how are you, how do you evangelize this concept wide enough, rapidly enough, right? And then take people up the curve? Because I think there's 3 parts to it, as I said, right? So how are you doing that? Because you're obviously very, very passionate about it. You believe in it, and that's how you should be, like any good sound founder. And you've been doing this for decades, as the other day when you were telling me that very interesting story, right? So how are you evangelizing this?
Well, I mean, I don't want to be, it so happens, and it has, it took a lot of work and it has pluses and minuses, but a lot of people heard of me in the financial industry, and so I have entree into a lot of whatever places I want to go, so that helps me with the evangelizing part. But I think there's a more fundamental thing, which is, like I said, there's a lot of money to be made, and there's a lot of protection for nation states to be had, but interestingly, technically, the infrastructure is not inherently a centralized one. It's a decentralized one in a few dimensions, and that only improves its robustness, but also its scalability.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, there is a kind of central entity in the system. You need at least one that doesn't take custody, but it makes sure that things happen, locks things up so the other people can unlock them when they're happy. So that can be in any number of instances. So even famous brands we have today in payments industry might find themselves, positioned there to do that. Commercial banks can operate it independently, as I mentioned. We can have a separate, blockchain-based thing that's, just operating globally with, but there can be, for each asset, there can be multiple providers. So you get a very decentralized and robust system that is very scalable. So, technically, one of the key features is, there's like 1,100 exchange traded funds just by BlackRock. So those are all different. There's 10,000 altogether. 10% of global assets under management are in ETFs. It's a $10 trillion. It's a proven. We just use those assets. The same legal structures. It's all great. So the central entity can auction off like a shopping mall. That's a proven business model. Who wants to be the dollar provider? Well, that's going to cost you. There's a lot of ways to scale it, but technically, you see, if you made a system like that, it was all centralized. If any one of those asset category providers kind of failed or was sluggish or went down, the whole system would start to look bad. Yeah. So I've designed it in such a way that only these lightweight central entities, of which there can be several, so central maybe sounds more centralized than it is, has to be live at any given moment. So all the asset providers are offline. So when you make a payment, it's only between you and the central entity, and then it's kind of locked in. It's sure that it's going to happen. The recipient, when they say, okay, yes, I see it's all good, they unlock it and they get it. So there's no online requirement from the asset providers. So it scales to any number of asset providers, and it's very robust. So it's from a business model point of view and a technical point of view, it's extraordinarily scalable. And because there's money to be made, and and there could be competition, I think we can get various banks and countries, and then the blockchain people,
so the whole ecosystem can get involved is the point, right?
Yeah, and everyone can be getting in there and doing stuff without having to wait for anyone else, and trying to take establish themselves, and it's not going to degrade the whole. And the client software, the user software, like we have a demo of, it's not fully written. Okay, I don't want to miss it, but the interesting parts are written. It doesn't have to trouble the user with where it's getting which assets. So those can be coming from various places. So some from commercial banks, some from blockchain, but it all can seem like one nice unified system.
Great, David. Last question, not a question. Last ask, and you don't have to have an ask.
No.
Is there an ask for everybody from you? Is there an ask to every listener?
Well, please take the time to go to chaum.com, and you'll see some of the things there's the eCash History Museum, and there's some fun, interesting stuff up there. But one of the panels on the landing page that you can click through to is Better Than Money, and you can I'm not sure all what will be up there when you get there, but the white paper, they'll hopefully be up like a audio, at least video, and maybe
so
links to some podcasts.
Familiarize yourself.
Yeah, check it out, because this is something that can save the world, and we can make a lot of money doing it. So let's get going.
Well, why not then? David, I want to thank you. When are you flying back, or when are you flying out of Singapore? You're going to hang around a few days?
I'm going to take it easy. Someone was nice enough to lend me their villa, so I'll just stay for a few days, and then it was a big push to get ready to make this announcement here, and I'll just sort of chill out, and then I'm heading to Dubai for a little while.
Well, then I'll see you in Dubai as we discussed, right?
And then we have COP coming up,
right?
And
so
all that.
exactly, we'll see each other outside COP, at COP. But thank you for coming in. I really appreciate it. The passion is just like next level, if I may say so. You definitely believe in it. I think your passion is just carry it through, and at least you have one person sitting here who will do his best to understand this to the extent that one can. And if I have a stupid question, which I'll have many, I'm sure I'll drop them to you either on your WhatsApp or an email. Yeah. But thank you for coming.
This is so great. Yeah, it's really been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Awesome. Okay, take care now.